Good afternoon, Peter. It's good seeing you again.
Hey, Skylar, good to be with you again too, man. You're looking great.
Thank you. I'm feeling great. My life is really good. My family is healthy. I'm healthy. We've all been through a lot in life, but we've made it through and we've learned so much along the way.
I can tell.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
on you.
And a lot of that too, before we get into the topic today, a lot of that, man, has to do with what I've learned from you. So I want to thank you. I had a I had a conversation the other day with someone, and he was talking about the three most important relationships to have in life. One of them being a master or a teacher, another one being a fellow traveler, and then the third being an apprentice or someone to teach to. And I feel like I've had really wise, good people in my life that have helped me along the way. And you have certainly played the role of that master, of that teacher for me in ways that no one else has even touched upon. So thank you for that.
Well, yeah, that's what I love doing, and that's an aspect of my life that I really cherish and fell into organically when I was, trying to figure out what to do with my life. This is what happened. But what you just talked about reflect the four archetypes of Carl Jung at the basic beginning of Western psychology. You know about the archetypes? You've got the inner child, the apprentice, the journeyman or the warrior, and the professor or the master. So what you were talking about, the three most important relationships, we all have those relationships within ourselves. And then the outside world mirrors it back to us in that way. So you found me at the right time to go from apprentice to journeyman, or what's also called the warrior. In the modern age, the warrior means going out into the world and facing the big bad world and bringing home the bacon. That's
Yeah.
what a lot of people are doing in life. But according to Jung, we have all four of those within us all at the same time, but we dominate one or another at any given point in life. So even a small child has the professor or the master within them, but it hasn't become realized yet.
Hmm.
And the master still has the inner child within them. And so they've got to understand what that is, because when the inner child isn't happy, nobody's happy.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Interesting that these two worlds intersect, from your friend's comment to Carl Jung's writings on the subject.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember early on when I found you, and you would say something to me and I would get it. And you're like, Sky, there's a reason you found me. There's a reason we're having this conversation. And it's been fun to sort of look at my progress through our coaching together and beyond. And now being a coach myself, it's something that I pick up on when I have like an initial consultation with a client and it goes well. I'm like, yes, like they're understanding what I'm saying. There's a reason you found me. And so I find myself saying almost verbatim certain things that you told me. And it's like, what a blessing. How cool to have had both of those experiences of being on the receiving side of your teachings, still am, and also being able to transition that into my own sort of intellectual content and my own coaching practice, and assisting other people in their process with chronic pain and ankylosing spondylitis and other areas of life.
Well, I remember I took you really deep, really quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a rabbit hole, right? Consciousness. We can keep going deeper and deeper into the world and nature of consciousness. And you were getting it. So I said, all right, let's take it to the next level. And you got that, and I took it to the next level. And what we're talking about is the fact that when the student is ready, the teacher appears,
Hmm.
which is something that one of my teachers told me many years ago. So that's where you were, and that's where you are now. And in fact, all good teachers are students themselves, one way or another. We continue to read, we continue to grow, we continue to expand with the expanding universe. The nature of reality is that everything expands, and what you focus on expands. The universe itself is blowing apart, it's expanding as we talk.
Hmm.
So that's the nature and relativity of the human condition, is to expand.
Yeah.
When we contract, that we get in trouble.
Totally. And we put our intention and we expand what we choose to expand by where we put our focus.
That's
And
right.
right before we started recording, you had mentioned something that I'm going to bring up now. And you said, part of the coaching, one of the biggest parts, is not about how to deal with the pain. People who are obsessed about just suppressing pain they typically aren't the ones that reclaim their life from disease. It's the people who focus on wellness, on expansion of the positive areas in their life, and they cultivate more and more and more of that, specifically with the potency of coaching. We both know how powerful that is. That's the true fast track. And that's where the body starts to come back into balance, when people are in that expansive state.
Yeah, that's right. And so we hardly ever talk about AS, do we? We talk about the individual and growth. And in my books, I explain it as focusing on the opposite virtue. Instead of focusing on the pain and how to make it go away and why it's there and what went wrong and what to do, we focus on the exact opposite,
Mm-hmm.
on becoming loving, light, non-resistant,
Yeah.
non-reactive, healthy, wealthy, wise, aware, conscious. And then the negative things fall away on their own.
Yeah.
That's what people don't realize, and that's what I've discovered, and now you've discovered as well, is the true key to recovery is focusing on the opposite virtues and letting the old stuff fall away on its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Totally.
really a lot easier than fighting it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really, you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about creating the opposite virtues of disease. And we both know Michael Eisner, and some of our listeners do too. Michael is a podcast host himself. His podcast is called Ankylosing Spondylitis Natural Health. And he has a fun story about his coaching with you, Peter. And I don't know if he ever told you this, but Michael and I are good buds, right? We're in the world of archetypes, we're certainly fellow travelers. And he talked to me about his time with you one day in the beginning stages, and he was so confused because he was like, Peter doesn't want to talk about ankylosing spondylitis. He's like, I thought I was there, to learn about ankylosing spondylitis, and Peter doesn't want to talk about it. And his brain was just scrambled. He's like, why do we not want to talk about ankylosing spondylitis? And now he gets it, right? He's been a very successful person, and but at the time he thought he had to talk and learn more about ankylosing spondylitis. And you took him into the virtues of wellness, not the virtues of disease.
Yeah, the more he wanted to talk about AS, the worse it got. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do it or didn't want to talk about it. It's that every time he'd go there, I'd change the subject on him. Throw him a little bit of a curveball and say, hey, wait a minute.
So you can see where people, I see this in my coaching practice too, where people will want to talk about the very thing that's holding them back to try and figure it out. They put their cognitive mind into motion trying to deduce the situation, break it apart, which is something their brains do well. But in the world of chronic disease, that type of thinking oftentimes leaves people quite hopeless. Whereas what we talk about is the opposite of trying to break apart the problems. We're talking about building wellness, being well.
Right. So what people don't understand is that the more they analyze this subject, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
So we all feel that to analyze what's going on is the road to the solution, because if I can figure out what's wrong with it, then I can fix it and then come to a solution, which works for an automobile or a jet engine or a pencil sharpener, but not with human consciousness.
Yeah.
So it's a misuse of the conscious mind to analyze what's wrong. Analyzing can be used if you're an engineer or a builder or a mathematician. You can use analysis. But when it comes to getting healthy and happy and wealthy and well, it's a misuse of that energy. The proper use of the energy is to choose and focus. It's called mindset. Choose what it is you'd like to experience and focus on that instead of trying to analyze and figure out why it isn't happening.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it works a whole lot more quickly. That's what a lot of people who take my advanced courses and my beginning course of the challenge, the AS Recovery Challenge, I can't believe how fast it works. That's one of the biggest feedback statements I get is, I can't believe how quickly this took place. Mm-hmm. Because we changed their focus.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. I've seen numerous people do that in your current coaching classes. I see my process with it, and they're trying to especially with chronic disease, something like ankylosing spondylitis, it's a trap to sit there and try and figure it out. It's a trap. People do not get out of it unless they receive some guidance or they figure out something. But that mindset does not help. It's just a trap.
Trying to figure it out makes it deeper.
Yeah.
And the more intelligent you are, the more deep you go. I mean, Garrison Keillor once said that having intelligence is like having a four-wheel drive. It just enables you to get stuck in more and more remote places.
Totally. Oh, I feel so fortunate. I have such intelligent people that are part of my life, and I can see where their intellect can both serve them very, very well, and it can also sink them into these like spiraling holes of just like the endless abyss of self-doubt and whatever, where it can really ingrain a lot of stress into their life. And as we know, all this work, we can use the word consciousness or personal growth or coaching. All of it is essentially to let go of the unresolved emotional pain that lots of people do not realize they're even living in. And that's where the healing comes from.
Well, that's reversing the cause of the condition. That root stress that's built up in the subconscious mind and creates inflammation in the body through stress on the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And stress in the mind. It's all about stress. I mean, doctors will even tell you that.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that 95% of doctor visits across the world are due to stress and stress-related illness. And the number one symptom in these patients that are reporting to their doctors is chronic pain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what's going on there. So it's the misuse of energy to focus on the problem instead of to let go of the problem and focus on the opposite virtue. So I can liken it to electricity. You know, electricity is energy. It's a currency. And electricity can heat your home and keep you warm in the winter, or it can burn your house down.
Yeah.
Depending on how you use that energy.
Yeah.
So the misuse of energy leads to trouble and issues that you don't want to face. And the proper use of energy is the right way to proceed. So people need to understand what that means and how to do it in their lives. And you know, for me, I've been an erudite studier of philosophy and religion and world cultures for most of my life. So I've learned all these different ways to approach it. And I've put it together in an amalgamation of a synthesis of different cultures coming together to elucidate and describe how best to approach this. And people don't know what to do with that. That's why, you know, coaching and training is useful and relative for a lot of people because they've been taught to focus on the problem. We're going to figure it out. And the deeper they try to go to figure it out, the worse the condition gets because what we focus on expands. Every religion talks about that. Every philosophy has a way to explain that. So this is what people aren't understanding because they're approaching the body like a machine. And if the carburetor is broken or the fuel injection unit is broken, we need to find out why it's broken and repair that part and then bring it back to life. That's true when it comes to the motor car and the engine, but it's not true when it comes to consciousness of humankind. Mm-hmm. Consciousness is unlimited. Mm-hmm. So whatever you think you can experience, you can. Henry Ford said it like this. He said, whether you think you can or whether you think you cannot, you're right. Yeah. That's the power of consciousness. Mm-hmm. So now to bring it all back into a user-friendly explanation, there's only two things you have to do to overcome AS. No matter how you get them done, this is what you've got to do. Doesn't matter how you approach it, just do it. First thing is to reverse the cause of the AS. So people are like, well, I got to figure out what that is. No, just talk to Skylar or Peter. We'll tell you exactly what it is. Don't have to figure anything out. So the first thing is to reverse the cause, and the second thing is to repair the damage. And that's about wiring the brain, rewiring the brain properly, which is a function of belief and behavior. And it's not about believing and behaving like a sick and ill person. It's about changing those things in your reality and in the way that you structure your events in life. Mm-hmm. So that's all anybody has to do. Those two things. It's a two-step process. Reverse the cause, which is that stress that is subconsciously creating root problems in the body, and repair the damage, which is to rewire the brain with neuroplasticity, which you and I show them how to do all that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to jump back for a second, Peter. you said something. Well, I have a question for you. What do you have to say? So I want as many people to benefit from this podcast as possible. And I know from personal experience that I did not realize that I had unconscious stress that was causing inflammation in my body, that was causing pain, which was helping contribute to kind of a pathological negativity in life where I was just angry and frustrated all the time. I never realized that. And I know that a lot of people with AS might not realize that they're actually in stress. Their current reality is that they're in pain, they don't want to be in pain, and they're upset about it. I mean, I was locked in that for a long time. So I'm trying diets, I'm trying medications, I'm trying supplements, I'm trying essential oils, I'm doing chiropractic, I'm doing acupuncture, I'm doing
Trying
all
to
these,
figure it out.
trying to figure it out. And so for people that are like interested in reclaiming their life from disease, reducing their pain, and they have an AS diagnosis and they're currently in pain, what do you have to tell them about the fact that there is a level of stress going on that they're unaware of? Does that make sense?
Of course it does. So let's use you as an example then. You said you were in pain. Was that stressful?
Yes.
Yeah, that's stress
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
And you were angry about it. How did it feel to carry that anger in your heart? Was that stressful?
Very.
And then not finding a solution and resisting it, that's called inner resistance or inner
Uh-huh.
contradiction, and that's stressful too. So just those three things, those topics that you just brought up are exactly what people with AS are dealing with. That creates more and more stress. And then they mix that with their own self-image, which is, I'm broken, I'm sick, I have a problem, I'm ill, I'm not good enough. And it goes into their images of self-esteem and self-respect and self-abnegation and all the rest of these things that people do. And all of that is stress and stress-inducing. Meanwhile, people are just focused on trying to get out of the pain. They just want to get out of the pain. And so most of the people who come to me say, if I could just make the pain go away, I'd be a complete success. I'd consider that, a victory. I don't care if I can't eat any foods or if I can't run a mile or whatever, as long as the pain will stop, I'll be happy. So that's what they're focused on. They want the pain to stop, and that's very stressful.
Yeah.
What if you didn't mind the pain? What if you were a glutton for punishment and you loved pain? Maybe it wouldn't be as stressful anymore.
I mean, that's a very different mentality than I was in. And I'm glad you talked about that, because I think about the things that I think about my life when I had a lot of pain and I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So that meant there was stress. I couldn't go out and play. I couldn't make love to my partner. I couldn't sleep well. I couldn't eat what I wanted. I couldn't go out and socialize with my friends and have a beer because I wasn't doing starch. I couldn't go to a birthday party and eat cake because I wasn't eating sugar and starch and food coloring and all the things. And I realized, especially in this conversation now, every single one of those avenues of things that I would have loved to go do but couldn't was adding another layer of stress upon layer of stress upon layer of stress. And I didn't really realize it. I was just pissed. I was just pissed and I wanted the pain to go away. I didn't have the awareness to actually see what aspects, like where stress was coming from.
Well, you said I was just pissed. That's a form of stress as well, because you're resisting what's going on. I don't like it. I want to get out of here. And in fact, in my experience of working with people with AS for 20 years now, every single one of them has issues around anger. Anger issues are what are keeping them stressed out on deeper levels. And many of them, in fact, I'd say the majority of them, don't have an adequate way to release that anger. In fact, they've been told or taught somewhere in their culture, in their families, in their communities, that anger is not okay to exhibit. You do not get mad. You do not show your anger. So they just keep swallowing it until it backs up in their system. That's what's causing that root stress that creates problems in the physical body. Remember, stress is a mental condition that has an effect on the body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mind-body connection. In fact, the proof of the fact that the mind and the body are connected is stress. Stress is a mental condition that causes symptoms in the body. It's the mind and the body working together.
Yeah. Yes.
So that anger is what's keeping 95% of people incurable from these pain and conditions of inflammation that they find in their bodies. That's the anger trying to work its way out through the mind-body connection.
Totally. And ankylosing spondylitis is it's kind of such an angry disease, like inflammation, like red, swollen joints.
It's all about anger.
It really, like, if there's anger that can be like, if the body can show anger in symptoms, to me, AS is a very, very accurate sort of example of that. And I want to point out that there are different types of anger. For example, when I had AS the worst, and again, I had it for about 6 years. I mean, all through that period, I can see this pattern taking place. But it's important for the listeners to know that for me personally, no one would have, or very few people would have seen that I was actually angry, because
I didn't.
I hid it. I suppressed it. My anger was basically me thinking that I wasn't good enough and being really, really judgmental of myself and being hard on myself. And the way that it wasn't until I started working with you, Peter, that I started being aware of how I was actually talking to myself. And I was so mean. I was so mean. I've never been anywhere as mean to anyone outwardly. I've never like acted out. Not that kind of anger. For me, it was this self-directed kind of spinning anger that led into depression and just feeling bad. And so that's a type of anger that a lot of people don't see as anger, because they don't see it expressed outwardly. But it really affected my body. And I know from speaking and coaching with people with AS that this pattern is common.
It's called repression. And every single person who's listening to this call who's been diagnosed with AS can relate to what you just said.
Yeah.
It's all about how they feel about themselves. They're repressing their anger because there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
So that's what goes to create the cause of inflammation in the body through the stress response.
Mm-hmm.
All you got to do is reverse that, and what happens?
Start feeling better.
You start feeling better immediately.
Yeah.
That's why when people take my course, the AS Recovery Challenge, they can't believe how fast it works. Like I said earlier, it's like all we do is release their anger, take that part away from them so that it's not recognized as anger anymore, or unfairness, or any similar emotion. And their pain automatically improves, 90% within days. And then they're blown away. They're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And it's like you just said, you had no idea either. It took you a little longer because you didn't do the recovery challenge. You were coaching with me personally, and I had you in the gym training to let that anger go.
Yeah.
Remember going into the weight room with me?
Yeah.
And the way that I trained you in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where you were letting go of that anger.
Yeah. And that, for me, that was really important. And I'm really happy that that's how I was able to move that emotion, that anger through my body, through that productive means, because I haven't really been the kind of person that wants to like punch a pillow or yell or sort of do this, I don't know, I guess I've been more introverted, I've been more shy. To me, expressing anger was something I didn't want people to see me do. And so I never had to like, I never had to like punch the pillow and yell and scream and do all that. I was able to really funnel that energy into a productive means with you. And then with your advice on training to like actually how to move the body, move with pain, move through pain, use that anger that I had to push my body in a healthy direction and my mind. I mean, that's how I rose out of AS like a phoenix out of ashes.
And I
And
watched.
what a thing to say. I know that like that statement brings tears to my parents' eyes, and it's brought tears to my eyes many, many times, because that was such a dream come true. Such a dream come true.
So that goes to your point of who we were before AS and who we are after.
Yeah.
So how often do you and I talk about AS?
I don't know. What do you think?
How often do you
talk about it? I don't know. Not a lot, I guess.
almost non-existent.
Yeah. Or
But
if we,
rising from the ashes and becoming a victor and finding a purpose in life and
hmm
knowing why you were born, most people don't have any of that.
hmm
That's what you learned in that process. And I know that goes very deep again, down the rabbit hole for most people. But that's who you are afterwards. You know exactly why you're here, what you're to do. And you
yeah,
get to have fun while you do it.
yeah. Well, and I have such a meaningful profession. Sometimes,
That's what I'm alluding to, yeah.
yeah. Um, there's a movie that just came out. It was just released. We helped. There was an Indiegogo, like an ad for it there, a fundraiser. It's called This Might Hurt, and I watched it with some friends and my mom the other night. And it's about the mind body connection. And they bring people in who have no idea that the mind body connection even exists, but they have certain diseases that the doctor believes can be healed by the type of coaching that you and I do and the type of coaching that that doctor does. And they come in, and the results are fantastic. And people start to become so much more positive. And I guess, like, back to your question of how much do we talk about AS? I guess when we do, we're talking about the lessons that we learned from it. We're talking about, this podcast, the mission is a place of positivity and empowerment for people with AS. Because our relationship with AS is one of gratitude, of one of it being a teacher, of one of it being something that got us on track to being forced into learning how to be well in a world that has a lot of sickness in it. So our relationship with AS is so positive and so
I wouldn't
unique.
be where I am today without it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
totally led me on a life path. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's doing for everybody. Any chronic condition that people have is an opportunity to lead them to their best life. But that's not what our culture teaches. But the movie that you just referenced, This Might Hurt a Little, or whatever that was called, I heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're teaching the same thing that I've been teaching for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for advancement, an opportunity for spiritual awakening. Because AS will not let go until you do something about it. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're just trying to run away and cover it up with, opioids or painkillers or whatever, it never goes away. Even your doctors will tell you that. It never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Not as long as you keep trying to run away from it or cover it up.
Yeah. And one of the scariest places that I think that I've ever been in my life with AS was having the thoughts and believing the thoughts, believing the prognosis that I can't do anything about this. That right there was such a victimizing place to be, because I just felt powerless.
It's one of the archetypes, the inner victim. It's
Yeah.
not the four main archetypes, but there are 10,000 or more archetypes, and the inner victim is what almost everybody with chronic illness is feeling. There's
Yeah.
nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. And I'm empathetic because I've been there. I have compassion for them because I feel like all of us on earth are doing the best we can with what we know, with the resources we have, with what we've been told, with
That's true.
the level of energy that we can put towards things in life. And so again, with this podcast, if there's one main theme that I want people to get, it's that that you can do something about your situation.
Well, we know it. We absolutely know for sure that this is the case, that you can do it. You don't have to remain a victim. I'm not a victim, and I was a big victim. You're not a victim any longer either, and the people that we work with come out of victimhood into victory. That's why I call it the AS victors. You go from victimhood to victory. Victimhood means I'm powerless. And that powerlessness makes them lose their identity of who they really are. It cuts them off from the higher self and the awareness of what is possible for them. And that creates anger. And anger creates resentment. And anger and resentment create inner stress that people aren't even aware of. And that inner stress creates negative immune response. And then that negative immune response leads to inflammation. in pain, and they're just trying to run away from it. And no matter where you go, there you are. You cannot run from this.
Well, so let's talk about that, because you're talking about running away from pain. A lot of people are talking about fighting pain. Are they the same thing? What are your thoughts?
Fight or flight, they're both stress responses in the body, in the nervous system. So yeah, it's a similar function, fighting or running away. By running away from pain, what I mean is they're trying to make it stop. You know,
Okay.
whether they're fighting with it or, you know, trying to ignore it, they're trying to get away from it.
Yeah. Good.
And
Thank you.
certainly we have, you know, I've got a lot of tools and techniques to help you overcome pain in the moment temporarily. Meditations, breathing exercises, kung fu stuff that works really well to alleviate pain for a day or for a couple of days, same way a medication would. So it's okay to utilize those techniques to help yourself cope with the pain. But I'm interested in helping people let it go so they don't have to keep coping with the pain anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so a couple things. I'm really glad you just clarified what running from the pain meant, because that term had come up a couple times in this podcast, and so basically it's making the pain stop, right? It's like
Yes.
it's what people want. Just make it stop, and yeah, both you and I know that we do not have to cope with pain forever. That we can actually heal from it, and our clients know it, and and so that, again, that's a message of empowerment, of positivity, to let that sink into people, because that's huge. That's huge.
And the purpose of disease is healing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the opportunity that's before you now. But if you're just trying to fight the symptoms and make them go away, then you're not really healing.
Yeah, so I'm writing that down. The purpose of disease is healing, and that would be a fantastic episode in itself, because we can talk about that for a while, and I think that I know that our listeners would really get a lot from that conversation.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You find it to be true, right? For most people, if this is the first time they've heard such a notion, it might sound irrational or alien in one way or another. The purpose of disease, what? There's a purpose? Yes.
Yeah.
And that purpose is healing.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you an opportunity to heal on deeper levels than just the superficial surface of, you know, inflammation and pain.
Yeah. And I think about the trajectory. You talked about mindsets in this episode, and so with the context of the purpose of disease is healing, someone believes that, chooses to spend time with people who know that to be true, who have done healing, who have studied healing, who understand the step-by-step process of healing and how to fully embody that success. That's one trajectory. The other,
And by the way, let me interject and say that's not taught in medical schools, not allopathic medical schools. They don't talk about healing at all. They talk about treatment, which is what they do, which is good. That's where they focus, and that's what they offer, and that's what you get. They don't talk about healing in medical school. It's about treatment. So we have to talk about healing ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're here for. And the audience has been really hungry for this info, Peter. I've gotten really positive feedback.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we're coming up on time here. So I just want to thank you again for the gift that you've been to so many people in chronic pain, the friend, the mentor that you are to me, the fun that we have, and the creation of this podcast and the classes and our teamwork is really something unique and special. And it's been a gift to a lot of people already.
Well, I'm so grateful to hear that from you, Sky. I mean, I know it already. We are blessed, we are gifted, and we are living our truth and our purpose through this. So thank you for recognizing that and being a part of this movement. So many people need us now more than ever. So I appreciate you and what you're doing in the world. It's truly a gift of higher awareness.
Yes, it is. And today is June 29th, and I believe that you have on July 1st another AS Recovery Challenge class. Is that correct?
That's right. The next one starts on Wednesday, the 21st.
Okay.
It's Thursday in Australia. We've got a few people from Australia attending. but it's Wednesday here in the States. Yeah, July 21st. I mean, July 1st.
July 1st. Okay. And I encourage any listeners of this podcast to quickly get on board with that. Go to asrecoverychallenge.com. Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can contact you through that website and send in an application.
Yep, that's where they'll find out exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yep.
asrecoverychallenge.com, or they can go to asvictors.com and see the other options or the other things that I have available, the other opportunities that are out there for them in terms of tools and techniques to be able to help themselves.
Okay. Great. Well, lots of fantastic content delivered today. These conversations go so fast, huh? They're so
They
fun.
just flow. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. I do too. Well, we will have you back on the show very soon. Our next topic, unless we decide to change it, but I think that the purpose of disease is healing will be a fantastic way to kickstart the next episode. And in the meantime, if anyone has questions for you, do you have a personal email that you respond to as well?
Peter at asvictors.com.
Okay. All right, Peter. Well, thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you, Sky. Once again, good to be with you today, and keep up the good work.